after being there for 6 months, are able to sustain themselves. Now, what are these people doing? They are alleviating poverty. You have a ground for that. Maybe where you are, there's one of the schools we audit in the slums. The school was begun because of the many poor people, children who are not going to school. So this bishop had a vision of beginning a small school, and the fees is subsidized. Now, because you are benefiting the government and its citizens, and again, that education, the fee must be subsidized below the market price so that you are granted the tax exemption. And then another ground is, the last one, you are doing an income generating activity so that by the end of the day you plow it back. Now, God called us to the Great Commission. So you have a lot of crusades and outreaches, and you realize your tithes and offerings are not enough. So you began an income generating activity so that whatever proceeds you get from there, you plow it back to the church. Then you can also be given grounds for exemption. And KRA will actually come for audit to verify whether whatever you're saying is true. Now, some of the benefits of tax exemption is that the income generating activity of the church won't be taxed, and your donor, if you have, will never pay tax. However, the church must really maintain good records. Don't say, me, I'm not a social man. I'm not this person who loves pictures. By the way, as they come to audit, they look at the pictures you take during those events. They look at your diary, whether in your diary there was a feeding program that was put in there, and things like that. So please, let's maintain the good records of our churches. I don't know, what again do I talk about? Mileage. Now, we realize most pastors have mileage, and this is a great problem. Now, one time, I saw a church mentioned in a newspaper, public newspaper, of taxes they were supposed to pay, and there were a lot of millions. And then I looked at it, I said, these are spiritual authorities, fathers in the land. And because I'm a pastor, I know what they are going through, and I know what might have happened for KRA to bill them the many millions they were to pay. Then I decided, as a pastor who is a professional, to visit the bishop and the office just to look at what they are doing. And they looked a little bit stuck, but when I began talking, they were so happy. They knew they would get a solution. And by God's grace, from almost 100 million taxes they were supposed to pay, by God's grace, I requested the KRA and the commissioner to allow me do audits for them for the period that the KRA audited, the 5 years. And one of the things that I found is careless keeping of records. They were keeping records, no receipts attached to the expenses. And for KRA to begin to audit, they have already gone to your bank and they have the information already of the monies that you receive. They have come, you have already given them your income books. Now, I realized 99% of churches record income so well. 99% of the churches I've interacted with on Sunday, the income is recorded so very well. They write even the tithe. They even write names of people who gave tithe. Then they put offerings there, and there is even a signature of 2 or 3 people. So it is a legitimate information. Then when you go to the expenses, nowhere accounted for it. So when I checked the KRA tax audit report that was done for them, now to KRA, every expense that is not supported, that is a benefit. That is not an expense. So they took them for 5 years, such expenses with no support, and they multiplied by 30%. Wakaweka hapo. Then they came again under the expenditure called fuel. They also got a lot of millions. There, fuel for bishop, fuel for pastor, fuel for who. They also recorded them there. There was a lot of money. Then there are these people who serve us in church, like our media there, keyboardists, drummist, and there are small allowances given to them. And they put them together for the 5 years. And the church these are not employees, no contract, nothing. And the KRA multiplied by 30%. So when we gave out ourselves to help this church, actually they paid us an audit fees of how much? Over 1 million. Because it was work. I had to put staff, many staff there to work there for almost a month doing that. Now, one thing that I learned from that experience that can help you is that the way we record our expenses sometimes exposes us to tax. For example, when KRA comes and finds you have an expense in your books called fuel, the next thing it will ask, does the church have a car? The church has no car. So whose car was being fueled? The pastor's car. Then that is a benefit to the pastor. And it is supposed to be taxed. Pastor is going for a mission. He has opened a church in Mombasa. He has opened a church in Kisumu. And the treasurer or the church secretary writes 100,000 being an allowance for pastor to Kisumu. But tell me the truth, is that an allowance? If pastor is going to preach or to open a branch in Kisumu, and the treasurer or the secretary is recording 100,000 allowance to pastor to Mombasa. So whenever KRA sees that word allowance, it just means a benefit. But if it is a church that is being audited and has been taught and have gotten in touch with people like Eunice, like this one, they will be helped. They will be told what was the pastor going to do in Mombasa, crusade. Crusade is part of the Great Commission that the church is supposed to fulfill. So where is the air ticket? Where is the mileage? By the way, mileage is even better because we ensure most of these, especially AA and the rest, they ensure that they have captured in your mileage the cost that is enough for your fuel and enough for wear and tear. Now your accountant went and wrote 30,000 fuel to Mombasa to and fro. It will be taxed. But a knowledgeable pastor who is being audited has learned. Yeye ameandika 50,000 mileage to Mombasa to and fro. When KRA comes, mileage is unallowable. So when you are dealing with your car to do an official duty, develop the discipline of keeping mileage records. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Now the church might not afford to give you the 50,000 that the mileage requires. You are supposed to be given. But that 30,000 that it has given you, just record it well as a mileage. Let it go that the other cost of 20,000 is your donation from the mileage to the church. And as pastors, we donate every day. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. So the way that you keep your books, the language that you used. So when I did the tax health check for that church, I realized it is the language that they were using. Bishop mara amechukua flight, ameenda South Africa, akarudi. Treasurer anaandika allowance to bishop for flight and accommodation in South Africa and back. And that is why the government sometimes have people, the public sometimes have an impression that there's a lot of money that is lying idle in the church. And hivi karibuni, italetwa for our approval whether churches should be taxed. So sometimes the way we keep our records matters a lot. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. But if your church pays you a salary, please just be faithful and pay your tax as a good citizen. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. If you are doing a lot of activities that needs you to get some tax exemption, please come, we will help you, we will advise you. Do at a little fee. You know, pastors also fear paying professionals. They feel like, hii unafaa kufanya bure. God bless you. God bless Pastor T. I watched that message. We need to appreciate professionalism. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Yes. But I pray that God will help us as a church to be faithful, be accountable, be a good steward of the little that God gives you. And one thing I came to notice, every time we audit a church, the finances double. Why? Because the generation that we are in needs accountability. Sometimes pastors ask me, Eunice, how much is your audit fees? It depends on the capacity of your church, but we also have a minimum fees that we charge. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. But if you look at it that you are going to remove your audit fees also sometimes from tithe and offerings, and you are having a young church, it might not be possible. But if you tell the church and explain to them, we want to be accountable, and we want to do our audit this year and make sure that our records are in order, and we need 100,000, and you tell people to pledge in church, they will pledge and they will give for the audit fees if your church cannot afford it from tithes and offerings. Another thing is about the budget. You need to work on a budget as a church. As God blesses you, please operate within your limit. Contentment with godliness is of great gain. So please ensure that you have a budget for your church. If your church ability is only to raise 30,000 in a month, please don't go to look for a hall of 40,000. Don't go to look for a hall of 25,000 when you know your income per month is only 30,000 and you are a pastor. I always tell people, whether a church, whether individual, your rent actually should be highest a quarter of your total income or your salary. So budget well. And as we come to the conclusion, we want to encourage you as Eunice Philip and Associates to embrace professionalism and even to have your records audited. Use the available professionals in your church. If you have some accountants and who is who, please use them to keep your book records, so that you only engage an external auditor to come and do audit after the resources that you have in your church you have used. Sometimes pastors tell me, Eunice, we don't need an external auditor. We have people in church that do that. Now, there is what we call conflict of interest. Nobody will, that report can never be issued to a donor. And if there are issues with your church, that church member of yours can never represent you at KRA because of conflict of interest. So please let's encourage professionalism. I pastor a church that is not very big, but for the last 10 years, we audit our books faithfully every year, and I pay an audit firm to do our audits. And it has helped me. I think my church is one of those churches where when people make pledges, they honor them 99%, if not 100%. by the way. But you see, the church will also follow the example of their pastor. If you are not faithful even to the tithe to your spiritual father or to headquarters, I don't know where you tithe. How will the members become faithful? Where will you find the confidence? By the way, in Africa, in Kenya, not even Africa, because in Tanzania, they do that. A friend of mine from Tanzania, a minister, came to preach in my church. Just a short testimony. And then after that, wanakuja wanakaa kwa kona fulani hapo kwa ofisi. Wanahesabu sadaka. Akasema anataka kukaa karibu na hao. Aone ile sadaka wametoa. Then he asked me, Eunice, all those people, how many do you think they were? Then I said, how much offerings is that? Now when you divide it with the number of people, averagely, how much is that? Then he said, she was a lady, she said, that is why you Kenyan preachers are not true to your members. Then she told me one day, she realized a few members in her church that were not tithing. So she gave appointment, went, visited them at home. The home was comfortable. Like, this is a very nice house. How much is the rent? And they say, oh, wow, the children have come from school. Wanasoma wapi? Ati pasi, wanasoma such a place. Imagine we pay this, averagely this every month. And, they are just normal charts. And when they finished, the man had given a breakdown that is almost 100,000. But what he gives in an envelope every Sunday for tithe is 1,000 bob. Then this pastor sits down, the Mushirika, and says, now you see, that is just 100,000. You have not told me the budget of the food you eat here every month. Then now she begins her lessons from there. And she told me her experience. Some people would appreciate, some will be annoyed. But the few that appreciated, when God began to bless them, they come to church and they testify and they say that. So when they say that, yule alikwazwa, anaona, kumbe hii kitu sio mimi peke yangu nilifanyiwa. So mkichunga watu, mchunge pia muwasaidie kwa their finances, because when they give, they are blessed. When they fail to give, and you realize most people who bother you in your church are people who don't tithe. In our church, if you don't tithe, even leadership position, you can't own, by the way. Because how do you put a thief to be a steward? Someone who can rob God. Yatakurob saidi. So the higher level of accountability, and the higher the higher you become accountable, the higher the resources you will attract. Now Jesus said in Luke 16 verse 10, one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little will also be dishonest in much. So may God help us to be accountable. God bless you.
Wow.
Sorry, I came with my staff up on nyuma. She can wave if she's there. Oh, she's there. God bless you, Esther. Thank you for accompanying me. God bless you. It has been such an honor. My contacts are with the apostle. If you want to organize a training for your leaders in your church or in your local environment, you might have pastors' fellowships. You can arrange for training like this. They would benefit greatly. Prevention is better than cure. God bless you. I'm so grateful.
Wow. I think, don't go away, Pastor, just for a minute, if you'd mind. As you are talking, I heard somebody singing, ati Mungu nisaidie kunyamaza. But is there a question that somebody want to ask? One question or two, alafu akae chini, because once she goes, she'll be going. Just one question. One, and then
The notebook so that
I can also have another one. One question.
is here.
nataka kuuliza hivyo so that, you know, sometimes when people start asking question, moja ikiulizwa watu wanasikia utamu wa kuuliza. That's why we ask in advance. The one who has a question, tujue hiyo ilikuwa genuine. Did I see a hand? Yes. 1, 2. Was there another one? Right. We start with our brother there. Just go direct to the question, and then we get an answer. And then.
Okay. I was asking that if it is possible, if maybe your associate can give us the PDF of these notes so that we can go and read more deep so that we may be able to understand.
Thank you. Someone else?
My question had been asked.
Yes, Apostle.
Thank you so much, Reverend Eunice. She's our auditor for Life Church International. Recently, she gave us a very good report. She's helped us over the years, especially on matters of those 15 types of records. One of the things we do not agree with her, because I'm asking on behalf of these people, is because of the animal called honorarium. When a preacher comes, can you comment on how much should the honorarium and the KRA will not track it?
Yeah, we invite speakers in our churches and we sometimes bless them with honorarium. And these speakers we invite, they also have other sources of income. Yes. So as you bless them with honorarium, that honorarium is supposed to be taxed if it is within the tax threshold. Or you can decide to treat it as a consultancy if you want to be kind and charge 5% of it if it is more than 24,000. By the way, that also contributed to that KRA audit I was talking about. Yes. So if the honorarium is properly captured in your church records, but yes, the preacher you deduct. By the way, I've ministered in certain churches.
Niliwaambia maswali itakuwa tamu sasa. Okay.
I have ministered in certain churches where after ministration I was given an honorarium and they deducted 5% withholding tax on that money. And they submitted and later on sent me the withholding certificate to help me to add to my tax liability by the end of the year. And I signed a payment voucher. Siniwe unajifanya mtakatifu sana, hasa utaambiaje guest speaker ati guest speaker aingie kwa ofisi assign payment voucher. They know. By the way, they know. When you are just giving them an envelope as you escort them outside, they are just looking at how ignorant you are. If they are exposed preachers. Yes, that is the truth. In those churches I minister to and they take me to the office and I sign a payment voucher for the money that I've received. If it is more than 24,000. I've really appreciated in my heart the professionalism.
Amen.
But there are certain instances where a few people, pastors who are a little bit tricky and knowledgeable, they know. So when the speaker comes, they say, they can have finished preaching. They say, let's come and bless the woman of God. And the woman of God is blessed in her hands. Nobody knows how much money she received. And it is nowhere in the church records. Then that one you might go away with it. Sikia mtu anasema that is the best, surely.
Wow. Well, imejibiwa sio? And of course, we are going to share the number so that you can ask more questions and give Pastor work. Now you know, kuna kazi ya kufanya, si ndio?
Yes, I was just doing a little sensitization. Bwana Yesu asifiwe.
Amen.
Yes. So next time you will plan, then you pay for the services, then you get organized notes sent to you.
And then we can tax withholding
Yes,
tax.
then you can tax withholding tax.
I am seeing somebody lift their hand. Please, I give that chance. I will not open that because if I do, then I will not be moderating well. You keep that question, but we are going to have a very short break, very short. Within that time, we can ask a few questions. Sawa sawa. Can we put our hands together and appreciate the pastor for the work? Wow. That was very powerful. Don't you think so? That was very powerful. And it has opened our eyes to see and to understand. And I think, really, Apostle, that was very informative. Sasa yule mtu atajipata kwa shinda, atajua aliambiwa. Sawa sawa? So after this, you go start implementing what you have learned. And please don't take it for granted. If those guys descend on you, because you may not know, if they descend on you, they are banned. And they don't call you pastor sometimes. They call you master. Because they don't want you to start. And they don't listen. Some people trying to be spiritual and say, let us pray together. You go, I'm telling you, go try. You'll be praying, you open your eyes, you see they are not closing their eyes, they are opening. They are waiting, it's you who is praying, they are waiting for you to finish. So take this thing very seriously. We are going to take a short break, I think 5 minutes, and then we come back and continue with the next session. As we do that, greet somebody, check on how they are doing and what they have received. 5 minutes, we'll be back. God bless you.